Hi, a very good afternoon to all of you. We are back again on a new edition of Kalinga Bhava Samvad, which is brought to you by the Kalinga Literature Festival team. Uh, I'm Lipika Bhushan, I'm only here to introduce two really dear friends of mine who are writers and who I've had great privilege of working with. We have with us Rajesh Talwar. Rajesh is a prolific writer. He has written 37 books across genres. He is he is a lawyer. He is with the UN, consultant now, but for long years he's been with the UN. He has traveled the world, so probably that's what makes his books very interesting and very insightful. They tell you more about the societies that maybe you and I have not ever been to. So thank you, Rajesh, for being here. I know your being here will add a lot more to this session with Atul. Rajesh is going to
Thanks,
be hosting the
thanks,
conversation.
Lipika. It's always nice to be with you, and thanks for the great introduction.
Thank you. Rajesh is going to be your host today with Atul. Atul is a strategist. He's a mergers and acquisition strategist. He is a consultant and is living in Oslo. I must say, Atul and I go back about 4 years now since we've known each other. And the mind of a strategist is always at work for Atul. So he analyzes, he gets behind even the marketing of books in a very strategic way. And frankly, I think that helps us a lot to understand and maybe at times, come out of the regular things that we do, think afresh. And Atul's first book, first published book, he has written a book earlier, but this is his first published book. It went straight on to becoming a bestseller. It's called The 100 Million Bet. I am so fortunate to be part of this journey right from the beginning. Uh, in fact, very few times do you get an opportunity to also, brainstorm on titles, brainstorm on how we're going to strategize the marketing. But Atul has been a wonderful author that way to be very accommodating with all the ideas that his publishers and all of us have ever shared. He is very enthusiastic about them, and that shows in the fact that the book went on to become a bestseller. It continues to be on the bestsellers list at various airport bookstores. It has hit the Amazon bestsellers list, from time to time. And today we have Atul joining us from Oslo. Atul, another interesting aspect that I must tell you all about Atul to set the conversation in motion is that Atul Koul Randev, the Koul is what he's picked up from his wife's surname. So basically, when we say that women acquire their husband's surnames after marriage, Atul acquired his wife's surname after wedding
On
to
the middle.
yeah to ensure that it's a journey of equals and it's not really one above the other either way, whether be it from the woman or the man's perspective. So all the best, Atul, and I know I will be on the other side watching you both converse. And Atul, over to you.
But thanks for the kind words, Lipika. Very kind of you.
Bye.
We speak-
See you soon. Uh, hey, Atul, can you hear me properly?
Loud and clear, Rajeshi. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Lipika mentioned, just out of curiosity, is it Kaul that you took or Randev from your
No, so
wife's?
Randev is my sort of, the family name, the name I was born with. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
we're
hers is the middle
Punjabis.
one.
and Kaul
Okay.
is the middle one that I got from the wife.
Okay. So Kashmiri Pandit, I guess.
She's a
The wife.
Kashmiri Pandit. I'm a Punjabi, or I was born a Punjabi. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just curious. So that's lovely. Uh, can you see me? Yeah.
Yeah.
We just disappeared. Um, Atul, I had lots of thoughts about your title when I
Hmm.
first saw it, the 100 million bet. And I'll tell you what my initial reaction was.
Yeah.
First, I thought, and then I'll ask you why you chose this particular title.
Hmm.
The first thing I noticed was that it doesn't mention a currency. So I said, okay, this is not the $100 million bet.
No.
It's not even the 100 million. It is the 100 million euro bet, but you come to know later that the
Yeah.
title doesn't let you know. So I said, okay, is this because the dollar, is being replaced as a currency, or is it because four words work better? And I thought, why hasn't Atul gone for the $1 billion bet? So I did a
Right.
Google search on the $1 billion bet,
Yeah.
and then it was clear to me that it could not be a title because it had already been taken.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure you brainstormed a lot.
Yeah.
So, why this title?
Yeah. No, thanks for asking that question. And yeah, I mean, as you said, right, you guessed right. If we added the currency, it became too big and a little clunky. We just felt like the 100 million bet flowed quite well, most to the point. And why this title? Actually, I mean, it's a longish story. It's not the title I started with, of course. And Lipika was saying that I was always open to feedback from the team at Srishi Publishers and Lipika. This was one of those things where I started with the title was completely different. I wanted it to be a little more sort of complex that reflected a little more the layers in the book. But the team advised, right, that we gotta, narrow it down for the to the main points or to the main sort of pivotal moment in the book. And that's how we arrived at this title, right? It refers to two things in my head. One is the big game or the big games, right? The game and the rematch for the 100 million euros, as you said, around which the whole book pivots. And to some extent, it also is a metaphor for life and existence in a way, right? That we have super high stakes in life to sort of figure out that clear path consciously. Yeah, so those 2 points sort of drove the title.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and I think I actually like the title very much. I have
That's
a
good.
good friend who wrote an excellent book, but she chose a very bad title. It
Yeah,
was so generic that if
yeah,
you did a Google search,
yeah,
uh, but I did a Google search of your title, and I'm sure the marketing people would have said also, and nothing
yeah,
else showed up. So I
yeah,
said, okay, uh, good choice because you do want your title to be very distinctive.
yeah,
Uh, I liked your cover also.
yeah,
Uh, I thought it was well designed,
yeah.
uh, but I had a couple of questions
Thank you.
because this is something which comes up with me also. One is that you do have some glamorous ladies in your novel. So,
Yes.
just for the readers to know that, okay, this is one of the pluses. But you didn't choose to have a female hand wearing a ring. There are two hands which are crossing each other. They're
Yeah,
both brown hands. Uh,
yeah,
neither of them is a female.
yeah,
So, uh,
yeah.
did you think about the issue, or did you just leave it to the publisher? Or
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, so the credit for getting this beautiful cover out, right? That all goes to the Srishi team. I had some ideas, but uh, they're the experts, and they just went with it and came up with this. And
sure.
I think the idea was right again going back to that title and the pivotal scene or the pivotal event in the book. We wanted to focus on that as much as possible, and that sort of came out in the cover as well, right? It came out a little bold and little, uh, almost luxurious, a little hedonistic as well.
Yes,
Dark
yes,
themes and the
yes.
bold font.
Yes, yes, and I thought this touch they did a nice touch that
Yeah,
here in the spine. Very often, publishers are lazy and they don't pay this attention to detail. So I found these two cards uh, on the spine, and I thought that was a nice touch. Two aces on the spine,
Yeah.
uh, and uh, very nice uh,
A
because
lot of detail did go into it, yes. But to answer your question about glamorous ladies and women, I mean, like I said, so the game that we were referring to, that's played by our central character Caesar. So we didn't want to complicate this too much, right? With having a
sure,
lot of things
sure,
going on in
sure,
the cover. So
sure, sure,
it's Caesar. He's there playing. He's got his bets. He's got his cards, and we have a game.
sure, sure. Absolutely, absolutely. You need to keep the focus, not introduce too many sub themes or distract. So I thought, yes, very good cover, very good title. Uh, I was going through your acknowledgements, and you spoke about different editing rounds, and you thanked your editors, and you mentioned 3 rounds. And
Yes.
I have had, I nowadays have less problems with my editors, but when I began to write,
Yeah.
I used to get furious with my editors. So the editor was the person I hated the most in the world and loved also after we came
Yes.
to a reconciliation.
Yes.
But quite often there were furious arguments and fights. So, how was your experience?
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, to be honest, I loved interacting with all the people who gave me advice on the book, right, and edited the book. Um, so I would like to think that I didn't actually have any challenges. I think the only discussion that went in many directions was the title of the book. But apart from that, right, on the content, my thinking was to go in with a high level of trust. They are the experts after all. And I always went along with that, with the thinking that the feedback was going to improve the book and help it succeed. And I was a first time writer, first time. So, if the thinking was, they've obviously sold so many more books than I have. So let's take all pieces of advice that I can get. So I accepted like 99% of the edits, that I thought made sense. And of course, some places where I felt maybe we hadn't communicated well enough, I tried to communicate what I meant with some things, and then we improved those things. And it came out really well.
So
Yeah.
no fighting with the editors. Hey, I don't like your suggestion. I will stick to what I did originally.
No fighting yet. So because it's I hope it's a success, and if it's not a success, then we might have a few fights.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll just mention, how uh, the, there's this famous book, Catch 22 by Joseph Heller, and I
Yeah.
was reading an interview of his editor.
Yes.
So he says, Joseph used to come to my office and we used to both leave the desk and lie down on the carpet, and then go through the manuscript.
Yes.
And sometimes we used to have 20-minute discussions over a full stop or a semicolon, whether it should be a semicolon, whether it should be a full stop, and
Yeah.
raging arguments. So, even about, which brings
Yeah.
me to my next question, even about the name of a character. So,
Yeah.
you might say that how is the name of a character important? But Joseph
Yeah.
Heller would say this guy is Tony, and the
Yeah.
editor would say, no, he doesn't sound like a Tony, he sounds like a John.
Yeah.
So, in your titles, the names of the characters, they are very
Yes.
interesting.
They
So,
have huge significance. Yes, in the book.
tell us a little bit about your choice for Caesar and
Yeah.
also your choice for Moria.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for asking that question. I mean, that was I think for me, a big part of, just building that story. Because it's a short book, it's 230 pages or so. So I don't have a lot of time here, right? And I don't want to spend a lot of time building a very sort of layered description of the characters here. So what I had to do was to pick up recognizable names from lore and give them to these characters, so that when a reader starts reading, they can already, from the first word, from reading that name, can start building a perception of what to expect out of this character. Right. So that was sort of the point of choosing Caesar, who was, arguably the leader of one of the biggest empires in Europe, and Maurya, who was arguably, the founders of one of the leading empires in India. And then with these two
Sure.
pivotal figures, these two figures who have, always won, for a lack of a better word, they're serial winners, and I just sort of put them against each other. That's sort of how it evolved. Um, And then beyond sort of using these names as a starting point, then I started layering in. Then I started putting in some flaws, some sort of detailing some personality traits, and that kind of helped me make them ground them well without having to invest like 30 pages on each character, just building out their personalities.
Sure. Well,
Yeah, and this goes
you need to have.
beyond Caesar. Sorry, you said.
Sorry.
Now I was saying that this
Yes,
actually
please. You
goes
were saying something.
beyond. This goes beyond Caesar and Moria, because or even the people around them, are in some ways, the names are influenced by people around. For example, Chandragupta Maurya. So Vishnu Gupta, who is basically Caesar's advisor and mentor here in this book, his name is taken from Chanakya's name. Um, Caesar's or sister, her name is actually also one of the real Caesar's sisters. So all of that stuff, those nuances have been added to the book in some way. There is no stray naming.
Sure, fine. So I thought, and you need,
Yeah.
when you are need to give them names which are matching.
Yeah. You're breaking up a little for me,
So,
Rajesh. Sorry.
yeah, I think it's just the net.
Yeah, it works better now. Let's
Okay.
power on.
So I thought it was they were very well. I mean, in a movie, you need to, if you have the hero complains if the villain is not impressive enough. So if you have two important characters and one of them is not, so yes, the Great Mauryan Empire. Uh, I I had an idea that this might be the thinking behind, but now we are talking about heroes and villains. Let me. Do you think this has cinematic potential? Web series. Uh,
Yeah.
what would
Yeah. You broke up a
I
little
was
bit
asking?
there. Sorry.
Okay.
But I understood you were asking about the cinematic potential, and then you had a second part to that question. What was that?
Well, only that. Do you think it would work better as a web? Do you think of it? Are you thinking Hollywood, Bollywood,
Yeah.
European cinema?
Right. I mean, it's a very humbling question, of course. The fact that you even ask. I mean, look, as any writer, right? I dream of the book reaching far and wide across many mediums. But I have to stay humble and acknowledge that a lot of these things don't happen for most people, and may not happen for me. But while I'm dreaming about it, I think the book is structured, well between these 6 sections and some interludes, which in my head is, at least, it's a perfect structure for a web series, right? It's got a lot of, it's structured well. You can almost pick up one section by itself and build an episode out of it. And it's got a lot of good characteristics that would also fit well with this the web series kind of structure of picking up a pace, end an episode, and then leave a person at a cliffhanger, and then start again with a new episode and burn up a little more. It's a fast moving plot, very high stakes, a lot of dynamic characters. So yeah, I think it would fit well in that genre, or in that medium.
Okay, and then in terms of Hollywood and Bollywood,
Yeah.
who do you think? I mean, we are all just speculating, but aim for the sky and you'll at least hit the roof. So, if you
Or the
had to
moon.
make a Bollywood production out of it, and you had to choose any contemporary actors, do any of them fit the bill?
Yeah. It's while we are sitting here dreaming. Yes, why not? We were looking at Rocket Boys the other day, and I was just amazed, by the quality of acting in there. They're all such talented actors, right?
Sure.
I feel like you could almost pick them up and throw them in. Also, some of the characters from Scam 92. We have such great talent in India, coming through these series. from these. So yeah, I think any of them could potentially fit into this. Almost a
Okay,
setting.
that's you never know how these things go, because Danny Boyle picked up the six a random book, and then he made Slumdog Millionaire,
Yeah.
something which and then of course the rest is history. So you never know how these things um, go on, and
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
there are more and more companies which are doing from script to screen adaptations. Um, so good luck with that.
Thank you.
Uh, Tell me, I'm curious because one of the characterizations I really liked was that of Moria, and Moria's relationship with his father when he's growing up.
Yeah.
That was very realistic, very moving also. Uh, and I thought, is there some autobiography or somebody else's life here? I must
Yeah.
ask Atul.
Yeah. I mean, that's a super interesting pickup there, Rajeshi. I think you might be onto something, and I use the words "I think" because it is probably a little subconscious that snuck in, right? The strict Indian father figure, always setting a high bar for their kids. Yeah, I would actually say that is slightly autobiographical. Always had a high bar at home. So to succeed, to study well, to do well, and to get the support to do that, all of that as well. So I think, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have that in my life with my dad, and try to sort of pass that on to my character Moria, even though
Okay,
it
well,
was challenging for him at some points. Yes.
sure, sure. This was something very particularly impressive
Yeah.
because when they say that thrillers, the characterization is supposed to be very weak, and literary works, there's very little action, but the characterization is very rich. Uh, but this segment, I thought, wow, this is really,
Yeah.
excellent, brilliant characterization. I said, he must be picking up something. It sounds so authentic, so real. There
Yeah.
must be some real life elements.
Yeah.
Uh, which brings me to my other question, because clearly you have the potential not only to write a thriller, but to go into uh, deeper character development, which could fit in better with a literary novel or a literary work.
Yeah.
Uh, so, moving to another genre after this, have you considered that? Is it on the cards, or you would want to stick with this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so my heart, if you're able to see the titles behind me here on the book rack, it's my heart is very much with fantasy. That's what I love to read, and that's what I would love to write. Right. So, um, you know, that's I at some point in the recent months I've come to a conscious decision that at least the next book I write has to be in that genre. I don't want to wait till I'm like wait much longer basically before I can start writing fantasy. So that's what's going to happen next for me personally. With the simple thinking about it is that right that I want to write stuff that I enjoy writing, and then hopefully we can match that with a set of readers that enjoy reading it. If it's and hopefully it becomes a success. If not, then at least I would have had fun writing it. And that's you would
Sure,
say
sure. So, so,
it's the most
so
important
have you
bit.
started some work already, or is it not
Yeah,
so far?
it's no. I think I've started it. It's not so far. It's both things, right? It's
Okay.
I think we're about 10% in of the first draft, so still early days. But yeah, slowly building up. Yeah. So
Okay.
yes.
Well, that's something we look forward to. Uh,
Thank you.
uh, you know, uh, Readers can sometimes, I always say that critics teach you more, and sometimes harsh reviews,
Yeah.
whether from critics or from reviewers, they make you think, yeah, I could have done this better.
Yeah.
So, what did your readers like?
Yeah.
What did they not like? if they did not like anything.
yeah,
And overall, what was the lessons learned or
yeah.
learning experience for you?
Right. Great. I'll try to answer that in a couple of parts. So, I mean, the first person who read the book was my wife, right? After I'd done the first draft and a half, and she, I have to say, I think that was the most scathing feedback I've received, like all
Okay,
through, right? Afterwards, because it was also a much unpolished work when she saw it, and of course,
sure, sure,
other
sure,
people
sure.
saw it after it was a lot more polished. Um, but yeah, so some of the feedbacks that I got from her and also some my editors later on was that I tended to meander a little bit, go too much into philosophy sometimes, which took the attention of the prose. So that was one of those things, and then we really worked hard to tighten that, to sort of take out some of that meandering, try to communicate the same message in fewer words, more pointed. So that was one. Another piece of feedback that I got from my wife and from other people afterwards was that in the initial drafts of the book, that the characters were sort of, in some ways, they were coming off a little misogynistic, which was not the intention for me, right? That was not what I wanted to do. And these were, of course, great people, of course, pushed into difficult situations. And then that the women represented in the book weren't, as well rounded, for example, as the main male protagonists. So I had to sort of, put on that those glasses and review it, and they were right. And then I sort of tried to, take it out a little bit, balance it out a little bit. So I think those two were the main pieces of feedback that I got in the initial sort of readings of the book. But fortunately, this was before the book was published, and we were well able to correct it. After the book was published, I think we've generally had decent feedback. People have enjoyed the gray characters. I planted some Easter eggs, such as with the naming and such, some other Easter eggs here and there in the book. And a few readers who found them, they messaged me, and they said that they really enjoyed those. So that was nice. They liked the pace of the book and the fact that it kept moving. I think one of them even mentioned the word unputdownable, if I may say so, on one occasion. So yeah, in general, very good feedback. Um, One interesting piece was from my mom, and she asked me, right, did I have to write about such explicit sex scenes in the book? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just went with the flow at that point. So yeah, that's sort of the things I've been hearing. But in general, I think after it's been published, they've received some very good feedback.
Well, that's interesting, and it confirms my own impression because I had a look at your book on Amazon,
Hmm,
and then I saw the reviews, and there were 3, 4, and 5 stars. So I
yeah.
said, Salman Rushdie, he says that in his books there's a very strange phenomena.
Hmm,
He's either getting 5-star ratings or he's getting 1 and 2 star ratings. So it's either four and a
yeah.
half, 5, or 1 and 2. He says either people hate me or they love me.
Yeah.
Uh, but I guess that is a phenomena that happens more in the literary genre. If you
Yeah.
are in a thriller genre, then you need to get uh, more
Yeah.
people liking you. Uh, so
Yeah. That's
that
a good
was
point. I mean, I guess it also, of course, Roshiji, he's a superstar, right? I'm like an ant in front of the mountain there. But I guess with him, it's like he's sort of always expanding the genre that he writes in. He's always sort of challenging, what a reader's sense of story or creativity could be. And when people are amazed by it, they love it. And when people don't understand it, or maybe they're not amazed by it, then they'll probably hate it. I would love to get more 1 or 2 star reviews, actually, right? I would love to have my book perceived like that, that it's challenging the boundaries of the genre. So, like, getting 3, 4, 5, I guess that might also indicate that we are sticking within the lanes of what people expect. And in some ways, which is also good, right? We have a genre, we have a readership, and we're trying to sort of sell them a good product. But yeah, it's also nice to feel that you're challenging people.
sure, sure, sure. One of the funny things which I found on your book, which
Hmm.
reminded me of one of my own books, was that this Amazon, I don't know if it's an algorithm or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it got your book classified wrongly, although rated highly. So
Yes.
your book is doing well, but it's listed as a bestseller, I think
Yes.
number 3 or number 4 in
Yeah.
game theory,
Right.
which is a different genre. So I think
Yeah.
the algorithm picks up, uh,
Yeah.
and then I had one of my books in the thriller genre.
Yeah.
It was titled How to Kill a Billionaire. And
Right.
Amazon had classified it in the self-help category, how
Right.
to. So, so I said, okay,
Yeah.
Atul is a bestseller, is writing bestsellers, but his book is also classified as a bestseller in game theory, which
Yes.
is not really related to the book,
No,
but
it's an
that's
interesting
the
one.
Amazon thing.
Yeah, no, Amazon does Amazon things, right? What can you do? But it's an interesting thing because I actually refer to game theory in the book, where
Okay,
because
okay,
when Caesar is sort of discussing it with one of the mafia guys, right, on what his next steps could be, and
yes,
he
yes,
he
yes,
lays
yes.
out if I do this, then you're gonna do this, and I suffer. If I do this, then you're gonna do this, and I suffer, right? So whatever I do, if I take an action, I'm gonna suffer. So my best,
Yes.
course of action is to not take an action, because in that case, I do not suffer. So that's sort of
You're
how
right.
that's
You're
how
right.
that
You're right. I
come
think
in.
we are underestimating the artificial intelligence because
Yes.
although it's wrong because there would be technical books, hyper
Yeah.
technical books written by geeks on game
Yes.
theory, and yours is a fictionalized,
Yeah.
reference. So,
Yes.
uh, but there are reasons why it has,
Yeah. Yeah.
put you in that class.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
how
Great.
uh, uh, would you like to give the viewers uh, something about your background?
Hmm.
Because uh, in India, the West, we always have this, criticism that the parents they drive their kids to be very successful in certain careers, engineer, doctor, whatever, and places where you can't earn a living, for example, writing or
Hmm.
philosophy or poetry. Uh,
Yeah.
the parents say, "Well, how are you going to, or painting? How
Yeah.
are you going to earn a living?"
Yeah.
So, about your, was it a fantasy to become a writer, early age,
Yeah.
or teenage? Just
Yeah.
tell us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. It's a very familiar story. With all due credit to my parents, they've always guided me well in life, right? But they did have these thoughts, of course. So, I mean, it goes back. I think it goes back a few generations. I think my mom's grandfather, he wrote a couple of plays back in the day. Nothing that became a commercial success, but he did those in late 1800s, I suppose, or early 1900s. And then my mom used to write a little bit, so I got that from them, from that side of the family. My mother used to be a librarian before she retired, so she was always around books, and I was fortunate enough to always be around books.
Okay.
So in some ways, the seed to write have got, it's so it got sowed quite early, and I was trying to do little poems, little stories, as early as 12, 13. And I think there, for a brief while there, I even entertained the idea of picking out a mainstream career as a writer. But then, of course, I got some advice that it's obviously a different, difficult track, a different road to go down. I even so then I took some time to do my engineering, right, and went into a very traditional job, working as a software programmer. It was around this time that the idea of actually leaving my job to write started coming into my head. I think I was around 25 then, and I spoke with a few writers who had done that, and I spoke with a few writers who had not done that. I remember I was speaking with this great writer Samit Basu. He was kind enough to meet me in a cafe and talk to me about his journey, and then he told me, right. I mean, both ways as fun. It's in the end, it comes down to how much it drives me. Um, but then, sort of, I chose to stick in that sort of work lane, and went to do my MBA instead, and followed a strategic path. In the end, I managed to come back to writing books. Um, but yeah, that's sort of how the journey went for me personally.
Do you think that at some time you might have to take a call because about becoming a full-time writer? Because of course, writing, the rewards are uncertain. Uh, they are there's great satisfaction, but commercially,
Yeah.
in fact, when people come to me, I always say, don't give up your day job.
Yeah.
But at some stage,
Yeah.
perhaps one has to take the call.
Yeah.
Uh, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I can only share sort of my personal opinion on myself, of course. Here, I feel like it's the balance I have right now. It's working for me. I have I have a demanding job that works well. It gives me a lot of rewards. It's it challenges me, so it's great. I really like what I do. And then
Sure,
the time
sure.
that I'm able to take out and write, and that's probably enough for me to try and churn out a book or two every couple of years. And that's sort of the ambition I have at this point of time. If that writing ambition changes and I feel that I need to rebalance, then I might uh, think about it again. But for now, it's working. Um, yeah.
Absolutely, Atul. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
In fact, I was fortunate to read a very famous editor autobiography, a guy called Edmund Wilson, who was one of the all-time great editors. And he said, I always tell writers that it's good actually if you're doing a job because your job is giving you life experiences
Hmm.
you can then use
Yeah.
in your writing. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're a full-time writer, then all you're doing is, reading books and going to events.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't experience the struggles of working in a hierarchy, in a job.
Yeah.
With so writing actually, so working actually enriches your life.
Yeah.
But as you say, if at some stage you feel you need to take that call,
Yeah.
but right now it's good enough.
Yeah.
You have a demanding job, but still it's enough time for you to. Uh,
Yeah. It's working, fortunately. What about you? What are your thoughts about it? How do you approach it? You've written 36 books, 3 books a year ish is what I've understood.
yeah, well, I think actually, as Lipika said, that uh, overseas travel, working in a multinational environment, uh, that has helped me to write much better. If I had made the foolish mistake, although I don't want to discourage anybody who wants to travel that route, but if I had made the foolish mistake of saying, okay, I'm going to write the next Booker Prize and just give up everything else, and then I would have really lost a lot of material. And I think
Yeah.
you're being in Norway, you're having traveled through through the continent, that reflects in your writing. And one of the other things I'd like to commend you and your book for is that uh, I'm hoping that this is also a genre in which Indians can break into the world market because, uh, in fact, you are sitting in a very interesting country from that point of view because till the Scandinavians got into the act,
Yeah.
there was domination of the thriller market by the Anglo-Saxons. The
Yeah.
Europeans wrote artistic stuff, but otherwise
Yeah.
it was, from childhood, Sidney Sheldon, Robert Ludlum, all those thriller writers, they were either uh, English or American or uh, so they were dominating the global market. Then recently, the Scandinavians got into the act with their
Yeah.
books being made into movies and their books doing very well. So, a question we should have asked ourselves is, well, what stops Indians? Why should there only be Vikram Seths and Salman Rushdies and Arundhati Roys? Why should we not be writing, uh,
Yeah.
you know, prose which so
Yeah.
I appreciate this book for that
Thank you.
because you have a prominent character, uh, Moria, who is crisscrossing Europe, having a very fast life, and maybe uh, tomorrow you will write something that will pave the way for other authors who are writing thrillers for an international audience, because
Right.
we have Indian authors who are writing mythological material and they are very successful in the Indian market,
Right.
but that stuff doesn't really sell overseas. So,
No.
uh, so in a way, your book is more challenging. Uh, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. No, thank you for that observation and for the feedback. Right. I mean, it's very kind of you to say that about my book. Very humbling for me to hear it. Um, you know, I'm just trying to write for something that gives me pleasure, borrowing from some experiences that I've had in terms of traveling, in terms of seeing things. I didn't set out to create a genre, of course. The fact that this falls in that sort of within those boundaries, that's of course it's very fortunate also in a way, um, but at the same time, right, it's kind of a reflection of where I am and what I'm doing, more so. um, and I mean, of course, it's a difficult one to think of why Indian writing doesn't reach these other genres. For example, to extend upon what you said, right? There's not that many Indian writers who are writing these epic fantasies. It's all coming from the West, or the Far East, right?
Sure.
And then one of it, I feel like it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem that you don't have a huge you perceive a lot of fiction coming out of India to not be good in that genre, and then Indian writers don't try to sort of write content that fits that genre, and then it's a perpetuating self-perpetuating problem. Just because we think it doesn't work, we don't write anything that might work. And then so maybe that's something that could change over time. I don't know, we just need to go out there and write stuff that we enjoy, and if it's in a genre that is not perceived as a mass market genre in India, elsewhere, then so be it, is how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because now you are thinking of fantasy. I'm also
Yeah.
reminded of children's fiction.
Yeah.
Of course, you have some people like Ruskin Bond, but they are just one or two, at the most three or four people who are giants. But otherwise, all the kids are reading uh, Western writers. We grew up reading, Hardy Boys, Enid Blyton, Roald Dahl, all these people.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be having young children having adventures?
Yeah.
So that's also, and why should other countries not be reading? As a kid, I used to read
Yeah.
Enid Blyton and see muffins, scones, and get very excited. What are these things? So
Yes.
why not?
Same here.
Why not? Why not somebody in Norway read about samosas and jalebis and say, "Oh, what are these things?" Uh,
Yeah.
so we have still to go a long way to penetrate the
Yeah.
world market.
Yeah.
And I think at least your book has targeted one genre, and it may encourage others that okay, let's look at this. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, it would all only be nice, right, if more and more Indian authors may, spread out that Indian diaspora outside in other countries. We have such rich history, such rich current events as well, right? There's so much to learn from, and so much to tell, in various genre, in every genre, pretty much, right? It should sort of
well,
yeah,
let me give you
spread
an
out.
opportunity to speak about your wife, because when you mentioned, I said I can't let this interview finish without
Yeah.
giving Atul an opportunity. In fact, I appreciated her a lot when you said that she really gave it to you, your first draft, of course, but
Yeah.
she was very critical. That is something so wonderful,
Yeah.
because good criticism you cannot buy for money or love. Uh, and
Maybe for love, but
let's,
yeah.
yeah, maybe for love. Uh, so tell us about your wife and how much of a reader, writer she is, and how much influence she's had.
Yeah, I mean, she is a big voracious reader, right? She reads like a fish in water, so and that sort of shows in her feedback as well. She's read so much. Um, I guess she could potentially write. She doesn't. It doesn't sort of give her that intellectual pleasure to sit down and write stuff. She's a very good illustrator. So we're hoping to sort of collaborate on a project or two at some point.
Okay, interesting.
Together,
Okay.
I write and she illustrates. If you've seen this, the book, right? We have a little illustration on page 5 or 6. This one at the beginning.
Yes.
No, yeah, and this was something that she made.
Okay.
So
So maybe you could do an Indian version of Wimpy the Kid, if since she's an illustrator. I mean, this obviously it's a completely different genre.
Yeah.
But that is another thing I think of when I think of Wimpy the Kid. He's such an Indian character because we are all very nerdy, we are all very high tech. The Wimpy Kid doesn't go out and play games, so he's actually a very Indian character. So your wife is an illustrator, I take it.
Yeah, I mean, an amateur illustrator, like I'm an amateur writer. Let's say, put it that way.
Okay.
So we are amateurs until we get better and become professionals, right? So that's
sure. But and your mother that part was also very interesting. So I think by virtue of being a librarian, books were always there, I guess, in the house, and it was a symbiotic way. How would you describe that?
All around me. So my mom, obviously, she's been a huge influence in my reading and writing, right? Like an immense influence. So she says she used to call me her little Abhimanyu because when I apparently it's hard to verify, but when she was pregnant with me, she was reading encyclopedias to me.
Okay.
So it started that early. Is what I'm told. But it definitely sort of reflects in the life I've had, right? Because books have always been around me. And I mean, she's a writer as well. She just hasn't written a book yet. So I'm always sort of on her case. Please write. So hopefully we'll see something from her as well in due course out there. But yeah, she's been a huge influence on my writing.
Atul, I may not have asked you some questions or some things you want to talk about. So please, the forum is yours. Because a book is such a huge thing. There are things you might want to talk about. So please take the floor and tell everybody something.
Thank you. I can talk a little bit, a minute about the book. You also asked me a question actually that I didn't answer, but I noted it down here. So I'll take a quick minute to answer that because I think it's an interesting one. You asked me about what I learned from the experience of writing a book. Yeah. And I think it was an interesting exercise. And, from starting writing that first word to having this conversation with you today, one thing I realized was that it's a process as well, right? It's about positive actions. And this doesn't have to be about writing a book. It could be related to anything you want to do in life, right? That you're not doing right now, but you dream about doing. That it could be as simple as picking up that dream, showing up on it consistently, even if it takes 5 years, and having the stamina to keep going. I think that was what I learned. That to get to this, that's what I had to do. And that's sort of the learning that I've taken out of my writing. Now I'm also trying to take up in my personal life and on other things that I want to do, things that I want to learn. And then, I mean, I think that another thing I learned was very specific to writing, right? That to write short, clear sentences and not meander because the editor would chop it all out anyway. So that's something I learned. Yeah. But speaking about this little thing, it's my first book, as you know. It's a crime thriller with heavy doses of philosophy and romance. I've tried to build, these two sort of behemoths, these two characters that go against each other in a war of wills. There is a huge amount at stake. There is 100 million euros at stake. There is a couple of lives at stake, and there is this person's journey, to finding the meaning for himself. That's what this book is about. And for anyone who's watching right now, if you haven't had the opportunity to read it, I would encourage you to read it and to send me a message about how you feel about it and how it sort of works for you. Yeah.
I would
That's
also endorse that. I really had a good time reading this, Atul, and we look forward to more work from you. Maybe fantasy in the next is something in the offing or something else.
Hopefully.
But we look forward. It's been a pleasure talking to you. What time is it in Oslo?
10:20. So just
Okay.
starting with the
Okay.
morning.
Okay. Well, you have a good day, Atul. Great chatting with you on the KLF, and thank you to the Kalinga Literary Fest also for it's a very lonely craft, and it's always nice, even if we are together virtually for an hour.
Yeah. No, indeed.
So,
Thank you, Rajesh, for a great discussion and for taking the time to talk about my book. And thanks, KLF, for the platform.